All right, welcome to another episode of Peanuts from the Plebs. And first of all, I have
We have an amazing show for you today.
well, we do, but I have a
Okay,
confession to
Sagar,
make first.
relax.
In the true Stalinist tradition, I have a confession to make that I was wrong. Daisy, you were right. Plebeians in Rome, in ancient Rome, were not slaves; they were the commoners. So, not that there is that big a difference, because
I'll take it.
there's a subtle distinction there, and I think
Yeah.
it applies to the
But they were
modern.
still unempowered in their form of government.
That's correct. I mean, if they
But
didn't own
obviously,
property,
slaves
they
was a whole
couldn't
different
vote.
level.
If they weren't of a certain gender, they couldn't vote. So there were a lot of limitations on their
Mhm.
on whatever power that they had. But anyways, going past that, well, what do you think about this whole thing just happened with the Southern District of New York, where the attorney for the Southern District, Berman, is refusing to resign because he said after Attorney General Barr announced that Berman was resigning. Berman said, "I never said I was going to resign, and I'm not going to resign." And they want to replace him with this guy is the current head of the SEC, who's never been a prosecutor before. I mean, he's a lawyer, but he's never been a prosecutor. And I think it's interesting that the Southern District of New York is doing they're doing the investigations, into Trump's corruption as well as Epstein, all these things. They did the investigation into Michael Cohen. So there's a lot of interests, there are a lot of conflict of interest potentially between, of this action of trying to remove Berman from power. And I know we tend to bash Democrats a lot, but I think this is a case where where Barr, kind of reminiscent of John Mitchell from the Nixon years. I mean, it's kind of just like the sidekick for Trump who does the dirty work, and he's trying to get rid of this attorney or this, the Southern District of New York, which is so powerful, as a threat to the administration. And I just wonder if you had any thoughts about that. And one other thing I want to mention too is this guy. He's with the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell in New York, which is this old law firm, which is notorious.
I have Jay Clayton.
Yeah, Jay Clayton, right?
I was just waiting for a moment to interject that.
So Jay Clayton, who is the head of the SEC that Trump wants to replace Berman in the Southern District of New York with, Clayton is a lawyer it was a lawyer for Sullivan and Cromwell, which is the same law firm that produced the Dulles brothers and had various Nazi clients during the 30s, or Nazi associated corporations such as IG Farben, represented United Fruit Company, and also lobbied for coups such as the one in Guatemala in 1954. So they have a long history of connection with U.S. foreign policy, and a very anti-communist, anti-socialist tradition. So I just thought that was interesting, just coming from that background. I don't think there's any connection between Clayton and that legacy necessarily.
So from my point of view, from the 1,000-foot level, Trump is extremely corrupt, and he'll do all these kind of behind-the-scenes kind of power plays that anyone would do. The reason that the establishment hates him, right? Because you see evidence now of like all the Dems getting together and loving Bolton, even though he's a horrible warmonger.
Right.
The thing he said was the worst about the Trump administration was that he didn't go to war basically with Iran, right? I mean, the guy's nuts, horrible warmonger, and all these Dems are like worshiping at his feet for this book. And they all hate together. They hate Trump because Trump puts a true ugly face on the oligarchy and on warmongering.
Right.
And they like, the clean, slick, goofy W or well-spoken Obama doing their warmongering for them, basically.
They like to work in the shadows.
Yeah. Yeah, and Trump puts a laser focus on everything he's doing. That's for sure, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it's interesting how Trump represents this phenomenon of populism, right? I mean, people are realizing that the government doesn't work for them, that there's a swamp, it's corrupt, influence of money, and then they get this guy. I mean, basically, he's a game show host, as Jimmy Dore likes to say, or
yeah,
a carnival barker. I mean, basically, he's a con man, but he definitely addressed concerns that people had, and that's why he was elected. So, I mean, even though he's corrupt and just well, I shouldn't use the word deplorable, but I mean, as a human specimen, he's really not somebody you want to hold up as a role model for your children, right? But um, that what he represents, though, the phenomenon of opposition to that corruption, to the foreign policy, all these things, that's genuine. So I think, yeah, you're right, Jim. They will
yeah.
the enemy of the enemy of our enemy is our friend. So anybody, whether it's Mueller or John Bolton or whoever the latest one is, if they're, it doesn't matter how you know right wing they are or whatever, if they are criticizing Trump, then he's our friend for now.
Oh, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, that's all that matters, right? Is that it's big bad Trump, which is an argument for why voting for Biden or voting for Trump, or obviously voting for a third party, but essentially that's seen as a vote for Trump, right? That if he wins another election, then who knows how he's going to be? Because right now he is at least a little bit subdued and he's
Right.
constrained because he's trying to get reelected. And you can see that in the actions that he takes, right? He supposedly, before this whole thing happened with the coronavirus, it was, he was in the lead, he was set to win. But then what happened? His dealing with the coronavirus, and even then, as his numbers were dropping, I think what really has like kind of sandbagged him now was his response to the protests. That authoritarianism that came
yeah,
out, that really
Right.
scared a lot of people that were carrying water for him before, and now they're doubting that because they're thinking, well, he kind of exposed the way that he would be in the second term when he's no longer worried about getting those electoral votes anymore, and he's just running rampant or doing the bidding of the corporations, continuing with the fascism.
right.
I mean, who really knows, right?
I was just listening to Crystal and Sager that was basically along the point saying that basically older white folks were, probably more on Trump's side, but this coronavirus thing has really scared them. And Biden is out there. Well, he's not out there. He's still in the bunker making ads and stuff. But, um, he's basically saying, well, I would handle this better. And, and basically they're looking for anything, I think, at this point, And they might also play up the fact that if they keep the coronavirus scare going, they might also, keep those voters from coming out at all.
Do you think there's any scenario at this point where Trump could win? Because even in like Iowa, that was considered a slam dunk for Trump. He's behind by like 10 points in the polls, and of course, we still have 4 or 5 months until the election. But can you envision any way that Biden would do something really bad, or something would happen that Trump could still pull it off?
See,
Well,
that's the thing. Like everybody keeps talking about how, oh, now Trump is winning or Biden's winning. I think with the way that the
no
news
idea.
cycle goes, and and people's memories, everybody forgets. Like everybody keeps thinking about,
Yes.
oh, in November people are going to remember how he reacted to the coronavirus or his leader. They're not going to remember. They're going to remember whatever happened maybe a couple of weeks before the election, and that's what's really going to drive it. Honestly, I think it's just way too soon to call it at this point.
I mean, that
Yeah,
happened.
I think there's no way what's gonna. I agree. There's no way what's gonna happen between now and then.
I mean, whether it's just something that just happens or whether it's something that's orchestrated. Because you think about 2016, there was all the stuff with Comey and the emails and everything came out at the last minute. Um, and I mean, that definitely had an influence. I mean, not that it would have been different, but I think it hurt hurt the Democrats at the last
Well,
minute.
it definitely hurt Hillary in the sense that that's where the whole crooked Hillary thing really cemented for her, right?
Right.
But it also showed the two-tiered justice system that we have, right? The fact that she was able to get away with all these things. Why? Just because she's this rich white lady, this rich white elite person who,
Right.
oh, because she didn't mean to, well then that doesn't
Yeah.
matter. So technically, if I commit some sort of crime and I didn't mean to, well, oh,
Right.
my bad. I
So
still committed the crime.
if Biden
Who
pulls
cares?
out if Trump pulls out the Hunter Biden card at the last minute and says, look at all this corruption, it's going to be totally corrupt. I mean, it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black, right? I mean, I don't see how.
Oh yeah, it's two of the worst candidates we've ever had, ever, and they're both horrifically corrupt. And
Which is disgusting
I'll
because
tell
that's
you,
what they said in 2016.
Yeah, I give Trump at least as much chance of winning as I give Biden of not being the nominee. I think there's a huge chance he's not even the nominee at the end. If you've seen anything he's done recently, he can't even talk. And
Yeah,
there's barely anything out there now with him at all.
Did you see his campaign ad, the recent one that's online? Like he has a he's had I know he's had a speech impediment, but
Right.
it really comes out in this campaign ad, and they have the words printed below so you can read that,
Yeah.
but it doesn't correspond exactly to what he says because he kind of does a lot of. Go ahead.
Anything with more than a couple simple syllables, he fumbles a little bit, and it's it really is almost like somebody that's had a minor stroke, struggling to talk. It's not I know speech impediment. They said he had not a lisp, but what did he have?
A stutter.
Stutter. It's not a stutter.
I thought he had a stutter when he was younger.
Well, what I'm seeing recently isn't a stutter, and it just looks so much to me like somebody that's got early onset dementia,
Right.
Yeah.